All right, good morning and welcome to this presentation about how the national shortage of accountants could potentially benefit the career of some of our prospective students. My name is Elaine Jolly, and I am an applied assistant professor of accounting here at the University of Tulsa. And I'm joined today by Jacob Odom, who is managing partner of the Tulsa office of EY. We'll just get started with an introduction. I'll start with myself. Like I said, my name is Elaine Jolly. I am a CPA. I studied accounting here at the University of Tulsa and then started my career in public accounting at one of the regional accounting firms here in town. After about 10 years, I returned to the University of Tulsa as a full-time member of the faculty, where I teach financial accounting, managerial accounting, intermediate accounting, and accounting ethics. And Jacob, if you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, your education background, and your public accounting career so far.
All right. Well, I've been with EY for around 24 years. I graduated from Oral Roberts University here in Tulsa and went straight to EY from college. And I really went in with the intention of hanging around for a few years and moving on. But each year I was there, I thought, well, I probably need one more to see if I can get that last one a little bit better. And at some point, you find that you've just been around forever. So it's been great. I've been a partner for probably around 10 or 11 years, um, really focusing on financial statement audits. So I'm on the assurance side. And it's been a great career. So I'm glad to be here to talk with you about it.
All right, great. I appreciate that. I think that's a pretty common experience that a lot of us enter public accounting thinking we'll pay our 2 to 3 years of public accounting dues and then move on. And in my experience, it really ended up being an incredible career. I always say I never would have left public accounting for any job besides this one, teaching. I
And
think
you haven't
public
even really
accounting.
left public accounting, right?
Exactly. I still do a little bit of tax managing work on the side. I got to keep a few of my clients, and it's really great to keep those technical skills sharp by doing a little bit of public accounting on the side. So let's get into really what brings up this discussion today, which I'm sure is a topic that weighs heavily on both of us, myself in education and then you in public accounting, which is the current crisis of the accountant shortage. Um, Here's a few facts I found. These are really a couple of years old, but things have not improved. Between 2016 and 2022, there was a 35% drop in the number of first-time CPA exam candidates, so fewer people entering the profession taking the exam. Additionally, roughly 75% of current AICPA members, so current people working in public accounting, are retirement age. So that's the group hoping to probably leave the profession over the next couple of years, and those shoes are just not being filled with the people entering. Finally, there was a 34% decrease in enrolled accounting majors from 2015 to 2019, which does explain part of that shortage. Obviously, if they weren't studying accounting, a couple years later, they're not taking the CPA exam. So this really leads to a crisis where the jobs are opening up and there just aren't these students available to fill them. From your perspective, what sort of impacts have you noted of this shortage on your firm and in the industry in general?
Well, I should probably start out with a disclaimer that I'm going to speak as openly as I can, and most of what I say is going to be my opinion. It's not going to be EY's opinion. So I think that's worth saying. This is a really interesting phenomenon, and I'll be fascinated to see what we do with it. When you look at the broader accounting background, you've had a couple of things happen in just in the course of my career. One of them was you moved from essentially a 4-year requirement to a 5-year requirement in education. So you need to spend an extra year in college. At the same time, you had skyrocketing costs of education. When you put those two things together, when I started, I made 39,000 a year. So I don't know what it costs to get, to do a year of grad school. I'm just going to say 50,000. Is that an okay number?
Yeah.
Let's say it's that. That's if you put those two together using my 2001 starting salary, that's a $90,000 swing in the economics of picking accounting between when I picked and when someone picked like 2 years later. So that's a really big deal. Then you look at the change in starting salaries that occurred over that period. And up until about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we've been seeing like maybe a 1, 2% inflation in starting salaries. And so you take a $90,000 hit and then you only gain back a percent or two a year. The present value of that is it has a huge impact. I mean, I know when I was looking at my starting salary, I got an offer for 39,500 from another firm. And I almost went with them because of that $500 change. That would have been a short-sighted decision, but that's the way you think when you're in school and you're not making any money or you're making very little money. An extra $500 is a big deal. And so to think about an extra $90,000, that's a big disincentive to choose that career compared to, a year before when they made that change. So we have since seen dramatic uh, increases in our starting salaries, and we've done it in response to this. Somehow or another, it finally caught up with us. We're not attracting who we need to attract. We're not getting people to major in accounting. We've got to change this. But that begins to highlight a big difference between big firms and small firms. I was speaking with a TU student a couple of months ago, and they went to, I think they went to the career fair or one of the, maybe it was a meet the firms night. And this individual got an offer on the spot without having showed the firm his resume with a small firm. They said, "Hey, you seem like a nice guy. We'd like to make you an offer." And the offer they made him was for $20,000 less than our starting salaries. This is basically a smaller firm saying, and this is my interpretation, the smaller firm saying, we're not having much luck attracting students. We're just going to have to start making some offers sight unseen and hope that we can get in front of them before the bigger firms that are offering more money get in front of them. And I can't blame them for that. That's a good idea. Um, but when you've got a $20,000 spread on starting salaries, the small firm that is paying that amount just can't be competitive. They're not going to be able to attract the talent. We upped our starting salaries dramatically because we had to get the numbers. I mean, EY and the other big four firms and the other national firms, we hire a boatload of CPAs. And so when you operate at that kind of scale, you just can't afford to participate in the ebb and flow of the number of students that pick accounting. And so I think what you've seen happen is we created a lot of space between our salaries and small firm salaries. And because of that, I think that the larger firms are generally going to get what they need. The problem is we need a much larger residual because I don't know about you. You're a tax person. I do not do my own taxes. We need firms to exist that do people's taxes. We need firms that I'm on the board of a number of not-for-profits. We need firms that audit not-for-profits. And so if there aren't numbers out there for them to capture them, that's a big deal. And then obviously we need people who actually do accounting, not just check accounting. And so companies need to be hiring people. And so my aunt runs a very small tax-based CPA firm in Arizona. And she told me this last year, they were almost doubling the fees for their clients. They've always been in a very cost competitive environment where someone says, "Hey, if you can do it for 1,000 less, I'll take you." They were going to clients and saying, "Hey, we're going to need to increase your rate by, 80, 90, 100%." And we totally understand if we're just not the right fit for you. So, no hard feelings if you decide to go with someone else, but we just have to have that extra money to recover our costs. For so long, the firms, large and small, have always said, this inflation, this is our problem. We've got to deal with. But we finally reached this point where we say, no, we can't absorb any more of this. We've got to pass it along. So I look at that and say, well, why are we not getting accounting majors? My hope is because students are smart and they're saying, if I have to go get 4 or 5 years of education, and if I have to pay a ton of money for it, I'm going to pick the profession that pays the most. And when you look at who we're competing with, one prime candidate is engineering. If you take a student who views the world in a logical way and who likes numbers, they're going to be thinking about engineering and accounting. Well, you've seen great increases in engineering salaries. And so I think we're losing out to other technical areas where the starting salary is bigger. And so I think the fix is, or at least one key fix is, we just have to pay more. So that's why I loved seeing EY and other big four firms really increase those salaries, because it's a job. I'm coming here every day. I like what I do, but if they stopped paying me, or if I were under market, I'd find something else to do. And that's, I think the economic proposition of college should be the primary, or one of the primary decision points students make when picking a college, deciding whether to go in the first place, and then picking a major. So, sorry, I talked forever there, but I think there's a lot
That's
to it, and I
great.
think it's a really interesting thing to think about.
Definitely. And you really focused on, the financial perspective and both the cost of the education and then also the salaries that are hopefully catching up with that. I also tend to hear that accounting overall has a perception issue. People perceive accountants as boring, as a kind of repetitive job. There's a perception that it's a job that could be done by AI, which in my experience, I do not see that happening. But we'll talk about that a little later on about how this perception of accounting as boring and kind of one size fits all is not really true. But do you see that as an issue as well, in addition to the financial gap, just the perception or maybe branding of accounting in general?
Yeah, when I think about this topic in the context of why we're getting fewer accountants, I don't know if I view that as a I don't know if I view the perception of it being boring as a distinguishing factor, and that's because accountants didn't become less cool in the last 20 years. It's always been a profession that people think of as boring. And so I don't think that that's a variable in this period that we're looking at. I think that a big variable is the kind of coaching people get around how you should pick a career. I don't know about you, but I hear you'll even hear this from accountants, but you hear it from everyone. You need to follow your dreams.
Mhm.
And maybe I've met someone who said their dream was accounting, but I don't know how many people that would be. I think it's pretty small. And so this emphasis on passion and dreams in the context of a job, I think that it is true, but I think that you really need to think about how it manifests itself. My dream was never to be an accountant that performed audits. My real dreams, truth be told, were I wanted to get married and have kids, and I wanted to have a house, and I wanted to take vacations, and I wanted to do, I wanted to travel and do things that are fun to me. That's a much bigger part of my dream. I think
Mhm.
it would be really cool in some ways to be the CEO of a large multinational company. That could be cool. But if you go meet one of those people, you might find that they do not have a life that you would wish that you had. I don't know many high powered CEOs who are not absolutely tethered to their job and to the company. They're more of a spokesperson almost than an individual. And that's not to criticize that as a career choice. I'd just say if you really look into the details of some of those jobs, they may not be quite what you think they are. Um, another, you know, I don't know if I'd call it a dream, but another thing I want is that I want to have deep and meaningful relationships. So if I say those are my dreams and I need money to finance doing those things, well, this is a great career for that. My little brother was a marketing major, and I'm not gonna knock marketing majors. I think that's obviously a big part of our economy. But when he got out of school with his marketing degree, nobody was beating down his door to find someone with a marketing major.
Mhm.
I had a job a year before I graduated. I knew exactly what I was going to be doing. He got a job selling athletic apparel, where he would load up the trunk of his car and drive to West Memphis and work with independent sports retailers. That was not his dream. Uh, he's more of a marketing kind of guy. Like he's big personality and a lot of fun to be with. But he picked a degree that didn't have as clear of a job as I did. And ultimately, through a series of jobs, he found himself in a great place. But I would say the place he found himself had a lot more to do with just who he was than about the major he
Mhm.
picked. I've been successful here because I picked a great major that got me in a job, and then I had to get by on my own skills and personality and talent and work. So that's where, when I'm talking about picking a major, I like making sure, am I focused on the right dream? Am I really thinking about it? Because there's a good chance if you interview a lot of people, um, people would say my job itself is not the dream. It's more about what the job allows me to do outside of the job. And then a lot of it has to do with how do I interact with the people I'm with in the job. I'm afraid that I've gone a little bit off track from where this question goes, but I think it's an interesting one. I might also add one thing on this accounting shortage. For us, there's a difference between attracting enough people on day one and retaining people.
Mhm.
And I think that can be a tough piece because if the supply of accountants is low, EY is still going to get a big chunk of these students, so we're going to get them. The problem is we're going to face a lot of competition in retaining them because, like in Tulsa, you're going to have Williams and One Oak, One Gas, Matrix, and Helmerich and Payne are all trying to get more accountants, and so they're going to be offering more money to pull our people away. And so that's where we do get hit is we may have the same hiring success, but our retention goes down because there's just more competition for our people. If I'm thinking about whether to do accounting, I love that ratio
Mhm.
because I want to be really attractive to people. I want to be in a market where there's high demand for what I do. And so I think that's great for someone picking a major. It's just a problem for us as a company to figure out how do we make sure we're able to keep enough employees over time. I'm
Great.
just going to pause and let you take that wherever you want to go. I said a lot of things.
Yeah, that was great. And that was extremely well said. I agree 100% that, growing up and in school, I never thought like my dream is to build beautiful spreadsheets and my dream is to prepare 1,000-page long tax returns. But exactly like you said, my dream is to have a job that I enjoy enough that provides me with the life that I actually dream of outside of
Yeah,
work, which is the time with my family and the flexibility of my life and the ability to transition into a role like this as a professor, you know, giving that knowledge to the future generation. And accounting has really, really been that for me. It has been uh, such an incredibly flexible job, a diverse job. And that really brings us into our next topic, which is the benefits of an accounting degree. Talk a little bit about a typical career path, which we've touched on a little bit here. Most of our students here at University of Tulsa do start in public accounting, whether that's at a big four firm, at a smaller regional firm like I did, or even a very small local firm. Most of our students will either go into an audit department, a tax department, and some of them these days in starting out in a more advisory role. After that, some of them continue on in that career, become seniors, managers, partners, even at those public accounting firms. But the vast majority are going to end up leaving for some sort of other job. So in my case, obviously, I left for a job in the academic sector. I have former coworkers who have left either to move to bigger firms or smaller firms while remaining in public accounting, while others have moved over into the corporate accounting side. So maybe being controllers, even CFOs, um, managers in a corporate setting. Of course, I also have some former coworkers who have gone on to start their own businesses, maybe moved into a more investment management role. A lot of different outcomes for these students, really all just starting from the same career path of entering public accounting. Um, is that pretty much what you see as the basic career path? And then do you have any other examples or stories of people who have taken kind of interesting turns from there?
Well, I think that's a great summary of common paths that CPAs take. One thing that one thing that I think is maybe, if not the most important thing in front of us, it's one of the most important things. It's we live in a very complex world that is full of chaos. Uh, and if I think of that chaos just in terms of figuring out what does the data that is in front of me mean, and how do I make good decisions with it, I think figuring out how to navigate chaos is just one of the biggest skills in front of us. What I find with accounting majors is they generally have a belief that I can figure out how to interpret what is in front of me. You can give me a spreadsheet with 1,000 things, or I can look at a large company and I can say, all right, let's break this down into the units and let's understand what's happening here. The ability to bring order to chaos, anyone that can do that is going to have success. And that's what I like about accounting is we attract the kind of people that believe there is an organized way to think about the world. I've just got to figure out how to get my mind around it the right way. When you find someone like that, they're going to be valuable in every discipline of a company. Every element of a company is just surrounded with uncertainty, and we're not sure which data points are important. But if you've got someone that knows how to filter things out and say, here's the most important thing, they're going to be successful anywhere. And so, my brother, who I mentioned, who worked in selling athletic gear from the trunk of his car, actually ended up becoming a commercial real estate broker for a large successful firm, and they loved hiring CPAs. And what they liked about them was, right, they actually understand how to structure transactions. They understand how to communicate the structure of a transaction to potential customers. They're usually hardworking. And one thing that, you had the old stereotype of accountants being very withdrawn and not personable. But usually what I find is, for whatever reason, accountants are usually very interested in other people and they're caring people. They may not all want to give a speech on a platform, but they're pretty engaging individuals. And I don't know why that is, but I find time and time again that I can expect that when I find out someone's an accountant, I can expect that they're going to care about the things I say to them. And so I think all the paths you outlined are true, but I think that people love hiring CPAs if they can have a conversation with them and say, actually, I liked that person. The CPA is very often going to get the job because they say, all right, they've proven they've got technical capabilities just by virtue of passing this test. If they can pass my smell test on whether I like them or not, they're going to be a really good fit in any role that I've got. And so whether that's being an entrepreneur or being a commercial real estate broker, um, working in commercial, these are just people that know how to understand deals. They know how to make order out of chaos, and they're going to be successful in whatever they pick.
That's a really great point. And I always tell my students, you don't have to know what industry you want to work in. You don't have to know what part of the world you want to work in. If there's five or more employees, they have an accountant or they need an accountant.
Yeah.
And, there are industries that don't even exist yet. But one thing we know about those industries is they are going to need an accountant. So it really does set you up for a great, flexible, stable career now, and then also for the future. Accounting is going to be needed by industries that don't yet even exist. And I think that's a really cool part about our career. The other thing about it is that even when there's market downturns, even when business is bad, even when the economy suffers, you still need to do your accounting. You still need to pay your taxes that year. And that makes it a really stable job compared to some of the other careers we consider ourselves to be competing with, kind of. You mentioned engineering. I know finance is one like that, marketing. Um, those are, more susceptible to market downturns and economic struggles compared to accounting, in my experience.
I think that's absolutely true. it's very rare that I hear someone who's a CPA tell me, I've been looking for a job for 2 years. I hear people of all disciplines saying, I've been looking for a job. You just don't hear that with accountants. It is a great, it's a nice built-in fallback plan. If whatever I'm doing right now with accounting doesn't work out, I'll just go get a different accounting job.
Mhm.
Or if I branch out and decide I want to be something other than that, and that doesn't work out, well, you go back to accounting. So you've got this fallback that you can always rely on, regardless of what happens.
Yep, I agree with that. I think it's really just such a great career for that reason and so many others. Well, it's a great discussion about some benefits of accounting degrees. So, last topic I wanted to cover is how do we, as a profession, bridge this gap between the need for the accountants, what is really an excellent job, and making that connection that more people should be entering this. First of all, are there any initiatives that Big Four firms or other public accounting firms are putting in place to try and make the profession more attractive? You talked a little bit about the salary perspective. Anything else you can think of?
We put all sorts of efforts into retention. Uh, we've got like at EY, we've got I think it's called a wellness fund. So if you start here, you get money allocated to you each year to pay for a health club membership or a hobby or whatever you want to do. And it's funny, it's actually not a ton of money. It's a nice little amount. But I hear time and time again employees saying that's one of their favorite parts about working here is someone gives them money where they've got permission to just go do something they want to do with it. Um, but in my opinion, all those efforts, uh, they don't matter if you're not paying a high enough starting salary. It's got to be first and foremost an economic proposition. Um, so yeah, when I think about it from that perspective, I think that's a big deal, and that flows over into the university. If you want a thriving accounting program, it's got to be fueled by an end job that pays enough. Now, I do have perspective on the university system, and
Okay.
it would not be welcome to some places, but I think that a lot of accounting majors picked accounting. They didn't begin with accounting. They started as a general business major, and for some reason, they had to take a principal's class in accounting, and they had a professor who loved what they did, and they noticed that this student seemed to do pretty well with it. You explain a concept, it seems like they picked it up, and so the professor takes the student aside and says, "Hey, you should really think about switching to accounting. I think you're the kind of person where this would work out." And and almost without exception, when you talk to people who work at EY, they're going to tell you about either their principles of accounting professor or their intermediate accounting professor. And they're going to say, someone just saw something in me and they encouraged me to switch over. And that's the reason why I picked accounting. I think that having professors who really want to see good things for the students, who are most interested in the student, is probably the biggest key to having enough accounting majors. Now, the industry's got to pay the students for it, but it's going to be at that professor level. And I think that academia in general this is where, forgive me if I'm crossing the wrong lines. Many academics have begun to idolize academics. There are probably many topics that we could research about accounting that would be interesting.
Mhm.
But the question is, are they important? And so to the extent that a university is primarily investing in more of a research function, they're kind of doing that for themselves because no one's asking them for more of that research. Now there's benefit to it, but my opinion is the main benefit of a university in a technical trade like accounting should be creating accountants. And so that's where you need people who care about people. They don't primarily want to sit behind a closed door and do research. They primarily want to talk to students and they want to learn about it. And they want to give them good career coaching. And so I think investing in professors, TU's got some great professors, and I think that you're one of them. And it's because you care about helping students make good decisions for their future. You talk to the students.
Mhm.
I don't think that there could be anything more important than that. From a regulatory standpoint, it, I'm fascinated to see that in my career, I saw everyone move to this high standard of, you got to have all these hours to become a CPA. And now many states, including like California, where you wouldn't necessarily expect it, are looking at lowering the standards of how much classwork you've got to do to become an accountant. I think that that is a great idea. I had 4 years of college. I started my career and I've done it's been fantastic. I came knowing enough to do the job that I need to do at EY. I think that there could be things to be gained from that fifth year or sixth year, and so I'm not knocking the extra education, but if you've got a real shortage and you can reduce the time someone's in school by a year, that means they save all that money on on that extra year of school, and then they get, in our case, between $70,000 and $80,000 of income for that year they would have been in school. That's more than $100,000 swing. That's a huge deal. And so I love seeing a number of initiatives, but most notably this one, focused on saying, hey, maybe we don't need to have as many hours in order to have someone start a career in accounting.
All right, and just for our audience, a little background on that 120-hour perspective you're talking about there. Sounds like when you took the CPA exam, there was that 120 hours, which is basically a bachelor degree requirement to sit for the CPA exam. When I graduated in 2014, that had increased to 150 hours, meaning you needed to basically have a master's degree if you didn't have a significant number of either AP or IB credits starting out before you could even sit for the CPA exam. And in Oklahoma, the accountancy board here has backed off a little bit on that in one perspective, which is that they now allow you to begin sitting for the CPA exam after those 120 hours. So once you have a bachelor's degree, you can at least start studying for and sitting for the sections of the CPA exam. You still need that master's degree, those additional 30 hours to actually earn your letters, get the credential, become a CPA. But it does put students graduating now about a year ahead of where I was when I graduated without the ability to take any CPA exams at all. So that's a really great point that you bring up. I know that the firms have also had some initiatives about trying to make those last 30 credits maybe more affordable, maybe easier to earn as you're working so that you can have that income, have the affordable degree, and get those hours done in a timely manner. Anything you want to add about that? Any specifics there? I know EY has a program like that.
Yeah, we do. It doesn't fully satisfy that additional 30 hours, but I think that it provides like 21 of the hours at a
Mhm.
cost of maybe $5,000 or something very low like that. We've got to be careful with those programs because we want to have great relationships with the schools we work with, and so we don't want to set ourselves up as a direct competitor. And that's why the classes we offer actually aren't even accounting classes. They're more focused on data because we don't want to compete with accounting programs. But I think for a number of students, they look at that and say, hey, if I can do 21 hours online at a very low cost, that's a great economic proposition for me. I can get that done quickly. I could maybe wrap up all of my coursework in 4 years, and I could be in the workforce earlier. And so I think that between what we've talked about and other things that are being discussed, it's making it easier to get into the industry more quickly while still having the right qualifications to do the job very well.
Yeah. And I also want to go back to another thing you said a little earlier about how professors really have that role of introducing students to this profession and this program. That was exactly my experience. I actually was a Spanish major in undergrad. I didn't really have a plan of what I wanted to do with that, but my mother encouraged me to take a personal finance course my senior year, and that was taught by a CPA. And she really identified that I would be a great student of accounting, convinced me to get my master's degree in accounting. And here at TU, I had some amazing professors who really helped with that and made it possible for me to transition from, never having taken a business class at all to 2 years later graduating eligible for the CPA exam and prepared to take and pass the CPA exam. I know myself and my colleagues, we really value building those relationships with our students. We try and keep our class sizes very small, usually 25 students or less in a class, just so we can build that personal relationship, get to know our students, identify those students that we think are going to be great accountants, and then make sure that they have what they need to make that a reality. A few other regulatory changes. We did talk about the 120 hours requirement. There has been an overhaul over the past 2 years or so, creating a new CPA exam format, which replaced one of the 4 sections of the CPA exam with a discipline section. So students can select a discipline that they feel they're most prepared for, whether that's business analytics, tax compliance and planning, or accounting information systems, those 3 disciplines. That kind of allows for more of a specialization based on a student's individual work experience and education background. And then another factor for regulatory changes is that most of the states are working together to try and lower state reciprocity barriers. This is important because of how mobile the workforce is these days, how often people are moving to different markets, pursuing maybe a lower cost of living, something like that, how many people are working fully remotely. So there is an initiative to try and make it easier if you're a CPA in one state to transfer that certification to another state, different from, say, the bar for attorneys where they have to take a completely different exam every time they want to practice in a different state. With the CPA exam, it's really just one exam. Once you pass it, you're really eligible to be a CPA anywhere in the country. There might be a few reciprocity barriers still, but really making a move towards lowering some of those. And with that, that brings us to the conclusion of this discussion. Were there any last minute things you wanted to mention before we wrap this up, Jacob?
Maybe just one more thing. As you were describing what your professors did for you at TU, one thing I love is that that's what you're doing now. I think something like this, it's not like you get a bonus for putting together things like this. It's just something you're doing because you want to help students make good decisions. And I know that you're a person that likes to spend that one-on-one time with them, talking about their careers and their lives and really investing in them as individuals. And so I'm thrilled that you're at TU. I think you're a tremendous asset. And I appreciate you taking time to talk to me.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, I agree. It really does feel like a full circle moment. Me coming back in this professor role and trying to pass the torch. So I really appreciate your time this morning, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you so much, Jacob.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.